I've been practicing yoga for about 30 years now. The first class I walked into was an Ashtanga Yoga introductory class, and I didn't know what to expect. I was wearing corduroy pants and a button-down shirt. I thought we were going to do some chanting, maybe some light stretching, and man, was I wrong. The teacher was kind enough to let me stay even with the clothes that I had on. And at the end of that hour, I was covered in sweat, lying in Shavasana, with a sense of peace that I'd never really known before. Yoga met me where I was, and the demands of the practice presented themselves as I went along, and I loved it. I spent several years in that style and eventually took a training course to become a teacher. As I began teaching, I noticed that many of my students were in their 40s and 50s, some sedentary, and clearly were not interested in the dynamic style of yoga that I had been practicing. They wanted something that would meet them where they were. So I began to look around at various forms of yoga, Iyengar, restorative, yin, alignment-based yoga, and I began to realize that many of the brands of yoga were simply marketplace products, but the essentials of the practice could be distilled into three main categories: active yoga, restorative yoga, and yin yoga. These three forms of yoga are like three primary colors. They can be used separately or together to create a variety of intensities of practice, target specific preferences such as strength building, relaxation, and stimulation to the connective tissue and nervous system regulation. Eventually, I was asked to lead a yoga teacher training in Shanghai. I arrived with my yoga books and my suitcase feeling I had a pretty good idea how to run a training. I'd done lots of classes. I'd never run a class, however, longer than 90 minutes, and on day one of the training, I was immediately confronted with the realization that I had to fill 7 hours. I knew what I wanted to convey, but my resources were not organized in a way that allowed students to learn optimally. So, on day one, I went back to my hotel room and began to cram for what I would present the next day. Over the days, I started to realize that the human mind can only grasp so much at once, and the physicality of yoga needed to be somewhat attenuated along with lecturing for long days of training. I began to organize components and develop a coherent teaching methodology. Much like my public class students, these yoga teacher trainers came from different backgrounds and had different needs as well. Some wanted to teach a very dynamic form of yoga, and some were much more interested in gentle and restorative yoga. I promised them that when I got back to Canada, I would organize the notes that I'd given them so they could look back on what they learned in an organized way. This became my first yoga teacher training manual. And the process of being thrown into the deep end and having to learn to swim like that and then reflect on how that was accomplished was crucial in my understanding of how to run effective trainings in the future. In this course I'll be teaching, you'll be attending and shadowing a 200-hour yoga teacher training, arriving early so that we can discuss the day ahead, and I'll explain why and how I'm laying out that day. At the end of the day, we'll review again and discuss. As we move through the training days, I'll ask you to start presenting small components, ones that you're familiar with and you feel that you can present well. I'll give you feedback on those. I'm going to ask you to start swimming in the deep end immediately. The aim of this 300-hour course is to prepare you to teach your own 200-hour yoga teacher training. And I'm not going to pretend that this is easy or this is for everyone. The last thing you want to get yourself involved in is running a training and realizing that your personality doesn't suit the job. So let me run through a few of the character traits I think are important in a yoga teacher trainer, at least the way that I see it. Number one trait would be a high level of conscientiousness. The ability to look back on what you've done, what you did well and what you did poorly in terms of presenting information to your students is important. However, if you're so hard on yourself that you don't want to continue, this becomes a negative. If you can adopt the perspective that you're going to fail in small ways in many areas as you learn to run a training, you will actually be able to complete the training. The next training you run will be a little easier, and as you iterate over time, you'll become stronger and stronger as a presenter and a teacher, and you'll get a clearer and clearer idea of exactly what it is that you want to teach your students. Honesty is the next crucial element that really can't be missing. As humans, we exist on one planet in an immense universe that we know very little about. Humility and curiosity seems to be the right place to stand here. Now, yoga is an art as well as a science, meaning a form of inquiry. We don't even know everything that yoga does to the human body, the mind, or the nervous system, and neither did the ancient teachers of yoga. But our aim is to educate students as well as we can and to admit when we don't know. If you feel that you have these qualities of conscientiousness and honesty, combined with some determination and a willingness to improve over time, then you might well be a good candidate to become a yoga teacher trainer. Your potential students could take an online yoga teacher training for a few $100s and receive a certificate and be able to register as a yoga teacher. But it's clear that the experience of becoming a yoga teacher requires a lot more than just an online course. Building a relationship with your teachers and friendship with other students, reflecting together, being in the same room together, moving through challenging emotions such as feelings of inadequacy and fear of public speaking will strengthen you as a person, not just as a yoga teacher.